And welcome back to the Frontier Mindset Podcast. I am your host, Cody Elliott, and the purpose of this podcast is to talk about business, entrepreneurship, leadership, and then hit some of our foundations like our faith, family, education, and maybe even some politics.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got a good one today. A good friend of mine. We went to college together, known each other over 20 years, and stay in contact every day. My friend Nick Stanley. Nick, like I said, went to school with me at Texas Tech. And he has worked for Congresswoman Kay Granger, worked for her for years, and then was a former city councilman at Aledo, and then mayor at Aledo, Texas, and is now the president and managing partner at Bluejack Resources, and lives in Aledo with his family. So thanks for coming on, Nick.
You bet, Cody. It's great to be with you.
Yeah. Well, kick us off with how you were born and raised. Tell us about your background.
Yeah. So born and raised in North Texas. I grew up in Arlington primarily. Most of my rearing happened there. Technically, if you're look at it, I was born in Dallas. We got out of there and went to Arlington. Grew up in Arlington, which was a fast-growing city at the time, and still growing to some degree. Now home to the Dallas Cowboys, Texas Rangers. The Medal of Honor Museum there's now. So had a great upbringing. I'm very, very blessed in the upbringing that I had, and from there, graduated high school and went off to Texas Tech, as you know. Met you there, met some good friends there, studied at Texas Tech, had some fun, and came out of Texas Tech and then immediately got into the workforce. And been doing a lot of that in the oil and gas sector and energy sector ever since.
Yeah, I didn't mention that. You went to school to be a landman, right? Was that your trade, as landman?
I didn't go to school to be a landman. I went to school for an education. I was one of those people that just really never knew exactly what I was going to do when I got to college. So I spent some time figuring it out and kind of did some studies of interest and some ag-related stuff, wildlife management, and things like that. Quickly realized I didn't want to be a park ranger long term. And so I made a shift and started studying political science and minored in psychology, and so kind of went that route, thinking I might go pre-law and go to law school at some point, and then I got out and got in the workforce and never really went back for law school. And so yeah, that was one of those wandering guys that just kind of was finding my way as we went. But
now, did you go? I couldn't remember. When did you meet Courtney, your wife?
Well, Courtney and I met in college. Yeah, and then we never really dated seriously in college. We knew each other, saw each other around, and then went our own ways after college, and then just kind of got reintroduced, if you will, by a couple of good friends of ours later on after we had been out of college a few years. And it was one of those almost divine things where she had a friend say, "Hey, what about Nick Stanley?" And then I had a good friend that said, "Hey, what about Courtney Carolyn?" And then we have this argument that I reached out. I say I reached out. She says she reached out on Facebook. Nonetheless, it's all history. However it happened, it was wonderful, and I couldn't be more blessed to be married to a wonderful woman. We've got 3 beautiful kids. We've got 2 boys that are 7 and 6. 7-year-old's about to be 8. The 6-year-old, he just turned 6 yesterday. And then Stella Kate, my daughter, is 4. And so Nolan's the 7-year-old, and Reagan 6 yesterday. His birthday was yesterday, so happy birthday, buddy. And Stella Kate's 4. So yeah, we got a perfect bookend with our little girl. So I am a sucker, like a lot of dads, and you know what that's like.
Girl dad.
Yeah, girl dad. So she gets away with a lot more than the boys do.
Y'all done at 3?
We're done at 3. Yeah, we think that God has blessed us immensely. And I quite frankly don't think my pocketbook could handle any more kids. So, yeah.
Now, where's Courtney from? She's from around the Fort Worth area, right?
Yeah, Courtney's from Colleyville originally, so right over there by DFW Airport. And they moved around a little bit whenever she was younger. Her dad was a restaurant and hospitality executive, worked for Marriott, and was president of Brewers Bagels and some different companies like that, Genghis Grill, and that they settled in Colleyville, and she was primarily raised there from middle school through high school, and then she went to Texas Tech, of course, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, your side of the family, your mom is now in Tyler, right? Or
Mom,
that area?
whenever I
where
went
y'all's
off
farming
to
ranches?
Texas Tech in 2002, my mom bought a ranch in Ben Wheeler, which is in Van Zandt County, kind of right in between Canton and Tyler, more closer to the Canton side. And then she moved the family out there, and so my sister finished school in Van, Texas, as a van vandal. and ended up coming out to Texas Tech as well, and made her way through Texas Tech, and is back there helping run the family insurance business. And in fact, now my mom retired last year, and so she's now taken over and is fully running the insurance business herself. So
cool.
Yeah.
Now, before we get too much like into your career and stuff, you want to touch on education? Like in college, same thing we talk about a lot. I say it. I probably should have went to work first, and then went back to school, and I probably would have absorbed more. I mean, your experience was the same. We both were kind of undecided, changed a couple things.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I mean, they say hindsight's always 20/20. I mean, I think that couldn't ring more true for education. I think that there's a reason why, I think a lot of people in college, I think it's the minority that go to college. They know they want to be a doctor. They know what they want to be a lawyer or a CPA or what have you, and they go through that progression. They just know start to finish exactly what they're going to do, and that's what they go do. I'd say the largest majority of kids, and really you're a kid. You go out to college and you're just like, they say, hey, what major do you want to declare? And you're trying to find your way, and you're like, I don't really know. And so I put myself in that bucket. I think you're somewhat in that bucket as well. So I'm honestly a big proponent of that. I think that a year or two of junior college while working in the workforce or going in the military first also would be, a way to find some adjustment, find yourself, make sure that you're kind of having more opportunity to really look at like, what you don't like, where you want to find your way. And I know guidance counselors in college, they try and steer you, they try and do the best they can. But my experience and what I recall from that was mostly like, what do you like?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I ended up studying wildlife management for a short time, because I didn't know what I wanted to declare. And when the guidance counselor said, well, what interests you? What do you like? Like, well, I like to hunt and fish.
Yeah.
And again, trying to make a career out of that. Not all of us can be, professional hunters on hunting channels and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that, having an opportunity to kind of take a step back after you graduate, high school, to spend some time in the workforce is really not a bad idea.
Yeah.
And we can get into more of that and opinions about, the trades versus a 4-year baccalaureate degree and a master's level degree and beyond. But yeah, I think there's a real opportunity for kids to really better understand themselves before they declare and get into it.
I agree. Well, we talk about that a lot. Like, what do you gain from a big school? Well, network is an issue, is something you will gain at a bigger school, the network of people you hang out with. And I mean, that was one thing that I look back on more than any specific class I had or something, was the network of friends.
Yeah.
The guys and girls I met there, from different places around Texas and Oklahoma. And, same thing. Is it worth $100,000 or back in our day, 60 or so? But,
right.
I don't know, but.
Well, and again, they say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I mean, there's some definite truth to that. But I think that, certainly going to a university, an institution like Texas Tech, which is one of the largest campuses next to Air Force, I think, in the country. I mean, we had a huge, campus with a lot of students, a lot of people to get to know, many that we didn't get to know, obviously, with a 40,000 plus student base. So yeah, but you're carrying those relationships forward. And I think a lot of times I do make reference to that. Especially, graduating with just a Bachelor of Science, people say, well, what are you doing with that? Well, I think I did build off of those relationships. And I think that's a very critical and important part of the college experience is understanding, not only finding your way, which I'm sure, the parents who are paying the tuition don't necessarily want you to spend too much time trying to find your way and change majors and things like that. But you're fostering those relationships. You're figuring out which relationships you shouldn't have, which ones you should focus and pour your effort and your energy into. And then those end up, helping a lot of times later on in life as you get into the workforce. It's the phone calls to say, hey, I'm in the workforce. I'm looking for a job. I'm, trying to get some direction here. And I know that, we met at Tech, or we were in a fraternity together. You're at this company. I've got some interest, or I'm applying to a job there. Can you put in a good word for me? That kind of thing. So I think that relationships are key in any part of life, especially.
That brings up a good point. You could talk about, like, do you see benefit in a fraternity? It's not just a social benefit.
Yeah.
You that same network, and then there's actually some leadership principles you learn while you're in a fraternity, but the network of guys that you meet, even when you go out into the workforce too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned from a fraternity. I think there's certainly some downsides to being in a fraternity if you're not disciplined, which at times I wasn't, just being honest. I think that it's also probably something that for any younger generations that may watch this or would choose to listen to us, it's probably something they've already been told or maybe has been expressed to them. But I mean, again, kind of taking some time. We had some fraternity brothers that did not rush the fraternity until they were sophomores, taking that first year and just getting grounded. Whereas, you and I got there and we immediately rushed fraternity and stuff. And so, but yeah, I think the structure of fraternity is really good and it's comparable somewhat to the workforce. You have your hierarchy and your leadership.
Right.
You got the president of the fraternity and so on and down the line. And you've got that kind of org chart, that organizational structure of even you got seniors in the fraternity versus the freshmen that are incoming and everything in between. And so, you learn a lot of things about, pecking order and the things that matter and the things that maybe you can influence and other things that you just simply can't. And so that's not real different than the workforce, but those relationships in the fraternity, I would say are really important. I mean, obviously you and I have some fraternity brothers that we're very close to that to this day are our best. They're our brothers, not in the essence of fraternity brothers, but truly our brothers, and people that we would say they're like family. And so I think that that opportunity to be in that environment where you can, again, further foster those relationships. And you have the opportunity to choose a fraternity based on your interviewing the fraternity as much as they're interviewing you and trying to understand, do these guys identify with the same core values and morals that I identify with? Or is this group going to be a positive influence on me or is it going to be a negative influence on me? And so, I think those are questions that 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds have to ask themselves. And, fortunately, I think we chose a good one and Beta Theta Pi. And I think that, we've got some really good brothers that certainly helped us along the way. And we hope that we helped them.
Yeah. Now that my oldest is 14, we're starting to talk about college and stuff. And it's like, do we want the big college experience or do we want them to be most efficient? Do we want them to go to work first, or work while they go to school? I don't know. Maybe career tech, maybe a vocational learning.
Yeah. And it's funny because we talk about that, Courtney and I do, about kind of the changing landscape, the workforce. And I know a lot of institutions, probably all institutions really, they work with major employers like, here in North Texas, it's Lockheed Martin, it's Bell Helicopter, it's, a lot of the aerospace and, groups and different companies that are in that space in defense, that they're telling these institutions like Tarrant County College, like Tarleton, Texas A&M and beyond, and all the institutions in Texas, what demands they're going to have in the workforce as they see the growing progression in the new programs from the F-35 to beyond. And so I think that that's something that, is, again, critical. We can talk about whether or not a 4-year baccalaureate degree is necessary. Certainly for engineers and those types of technical positions it is. But I think we're seeing, and we will continue to see, I strongly believe, a change in the overall landscape of what is necessary in education, what kind of education you should get. We obviously know there's a huge demand for trades.
Sure.
There's been a real attrition in the trades, and a lot of that baby boomer generation that were, that started the plumbing companies, that they're master plumbers, master electricians, roofers, construction guys that are down the line, they're aging out and they're finding that and we've known this for a while, but there's a lot of trades that are just not there. These kids have gone off to get a 4-year baccalaureate degree, and that hasn't necessarily been where their major emphasis needed to be to go into those professions. They could have gone to a welding school, or they could have gone to, learn and get certified to be a master electrician. And in fact, you listen to a lot of the pundits and people who are preaching about this, that I hate to say the easiest way to become a millionaire, but one of the best chances of becoming a millionaire is in those trades.
Yeah.
Is to start a plumbing company.
Blue-collar millionaire.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, you think about every time a plumber comes to your house, just to even unclog a toilet because your kid flushed a plastic toy that's 3 inches tall down the toilet. It's like
Several
$50. He's there for 15 to 30 minutes. Yeah. And so, so I think that those kind of questions, and then you've got the AI and the tech and all this stuff that's developing, that I think will really challenge and really change the landscape of higher education in the next coming decades.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, going into you personally, coming out of school, how did you get involved with Congresswoman Kay Granger? Did you work in insurance for a little bit, back with your mom before you got in with Kay Granger?
When I was still in college, I was.
You got in with her pretty young.
My family owns an insurance business out in East Texas. My mom was a a district manager for Farmers Insurance for about 14 years. Was very successful, and it was the first female DM and farmers in the company, I believe, or maybe in the state of Texas. And so I grew up around insurance. That's not how I met Kay Granger, even though that was her profession for many years. I actually, whenever I got out of college, I took a sales job briefly. It wasn't the right fit for me. I ended up leaving a year later, and then that's when I became a landman and got into oil and gas. I had some time where I spent and lived in Midland in the Permian Basin, and then had a short stop in East Texas working out in the Haynesville Shale, working some counties out there, and then eventually realized I didn't want to live in East Texas long term as a single guy. Tyler's a great community for families. It's not really an environment for single people, I wouldn't say. And so I bought my first home in North Arlington, kind of returned back to my roots.
That's right.
Started looking in the Fort Worth and Arlington area for a home, found a great house, starter house in North Arlington over by what's now the Texas Rangers Golf Club. And then from there, I just continued to do the landman stuff and on the downs and outs. I did a couple little odds and end jobs, but ended up, when I got back to Arlington, bought my first home there. I had a good friend that I grew up with, John Parker, that his dad, Charlie Parker, was elected to city council in Arlington. And so I reached out to Charlie whenever I bought my first home there, which was actually in his neighborhood, and said, "Hey, Charlie, I'm back. I want to get involved civically. How can I get involved?" He got me put on the Parks and Rec Board in Arlington, which is really my first, I guess, taste of actually being in a public service role, if you will, was volunteering my time there. I grew up in Arlington. I did a youth leadership Arlington program, which was amazing insight for a high school student to be able to understand kind of the inner workings of local government and everything that goes into it. So I'd had some experience there of what that was like. And so once I got settled in Arlington, Charlie got me plugged in, like I said, and then a short time later, my friend Jeff Williams, who's a mentor of mine, ended up announcing he was running for mayor of Arlington. Jeff and Karen Williams are Sunday school teachers of mine growing up in the Baptist Church in Arlington, and First Baptist Church. And I reached out to Jeff and I said, "Jeff, I think it's amazing you're running. I couldn't imagine a better man to run to help lead this city in these formative years we have ahead of us." And I said, "I want to help run your campaign." So I got plugged in there, helped run his campaign, helped get him elected. A short time later, we embarked on the sales tax initiative, the campaign to fund Globe Life Field to build a new ballpark for the Texas Rangers. Was really integrally involved there and very in the trenches on the grassroots campaign to help get the support that was necessary to pass that sales tax initiative in Arlington to fund Globe Life Field. Again, all thanks to Jeff Williams, and it was there that I met Kristen Vandergriff. Her late father-in-law was Tom Vandergriff, longtime mayor of Arlington, Tarrant County judge, one-term member of Congress. Tom Vandergriff is the one that brought the Washington Senators to Arlington to then become the Texas Rangers. He also brought General Motors to Arlington. So Tom Vandergriff was the man. Yeah. He was, there's probably no person in the history of Arlington that's been more influential or impactful than Tom Vandergriff. And so Kristen, his daughter-in-law, was district director for Congresswoman Kay Granger in the 12th U.S. Congressional District here in Fort Worth that represents portions of Tarrant County, Wise County, and Parker County. And she called me one day, and I mentioned briefly earlier in passing about some of those downturns that as landmen we experience. Anybody that's in the energy business has experienced those, especially when you've been doing it as long as I have. And it was during one of those downturns where I think oil was trading about $20 a barrel, and I didn't have a job, that by the grace of God, the phone rang, and it was Kristen Vandergriff, and she said, "Hey, we met whenever you were helping run Jeff Williams' mayoral campaign and then the sales tax initiative campaign for the Rangers." And she said, "I've got a position open for the Congresswoman to be her outreach director in the 12th U.S. Congressional District, and I want to know if you'd be interested in talking to me about it." And so the rest is history. I went in and interviewed for the job, and I said, "It sounds like an amazing opportunity." I'd always been civically minded, obviously studying political science. My mom used to campaign and help with Kay Bailey Hutchison way back in the day, and she used to take me to Austin, and I never forget the first time I stepped into the House chambers at the state capitol and just being in awe and thinking, what an amazing thing, what an amazing institution,
Yeah.
and an opportunity to serve. And so, but I ended up telling Kristen I'd really like to come on board, but I'd like to meet the Congresswoman. I don't want to represent, because the job as outreach director is to represent the member of Congress within their congressional district.
Yeah.
And so
make sure you align with her type stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So I said, I need to sit down with the Congresswoman. I'd like to schedule that. So we did that, sat down together. It became apparent very quickly that Kay and I had a lot of the same values, a lot of the same principles, felt similar in policy. And we didn't get too far in the weeds, obviously, but shortly after that, she, in the interview, if you will, she said, I'd really like for you to come, work for me and represent me in my congressional district. And so a lot of personal growth for me there in the 4.5 years that I worked as a congressional staffer for her. And an incredible woman, just a pioneer really for, a woman in politics, especially in the U.S. House. Kay was incredibly influential on me. And I'd say just the personal growth, the confidence, the public speaking, the opportunities to really engage and understand the problems and the complexities of the problems and how those translate into real notable action by good legislators who take those issues, good or bad, and they go and they influence real positive change, whether it's to fix an issue that's plaguing the community or the district, or something that proactively needs to be done based on all the briefings and all the indicators that like we need to get out in front of this kind of thing. So, but obviously Kay is stands on her own right as one of the most influential people in North Texas and really the country. And she was an appropriator. And so appropriations is a very powerful position in Congress, as you can imagine. We always talk about how Congress holds the purse strings,
right?
And that's very true. But there's people in Congress that are appropriators, and then there's more authorization type, members of Congress, and on down the line. Everybody serves in committees and subcommittees. Kay's route when she got to Congress was to serve in an appropriations capacity. She got put on Armed Services Committee as a freshman member, which is very rare. It's a very coveted position, very coveted committee. But because of the Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base being here in Fort Worth, Lockheed Martin, she has protected that base over the years through BRACs or base realignment.
Oh yeah,
or it could have been closed. And she went on through her appropriations ranks to become chairwoman of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, which writes the $800+ billion bill to fund the entire Department of Defense, or in this case now the Department of War. And so got to do some really incredible things with her. And see that process through, and then after I was no longer working for her, she went on to be chairwoman of the full Appropriations Committee.
Oh wow!
Which drafts the appropriation bill to fund the entire United States government. So discretionary spending.
Wow.
So incredible experience. And then went on from there, moved out of Arlington after our first child, came and moved to Aledo, to Parker County. Really landed here because just the incredible people here. I mean, It was having represented the Congresswoman in this congressional district and spending so much time here in Parker County, and even where we are today in the heart of Parker County, right here in Weatherford, right next to our county courthouse. It just became really apparent as Courtney and I were looking like, where are we going to relocate to get into a good school district? As we start having kids, you start asking yourself all those questions, and you're kind of forced to think about those things. Low crime, really positive, happy people. Parker County and Aledo in particular became really evident. And so, it's the same thing there, just got in the progression.
Were you still working for Kay Granger when y'all moved out here?
Yes.
Okay.
So Courtney and I moved to Aledo in December 2018. We built a house in the parts of Aledo, and it's right next to Aledo High School. And then it was, I guess, I stopped working for the Congresswoman March of 2020.
Okay.
Right as COVID hit. I mean, it was like Kay came home from Washington, sat down with us and said, there's something coming. It's bad. It's not good. It's really bad. And so we're all going home. And I'd already been to the point where I was looking. I'd been operating as a landman, early mornings, nights, and weekends, moonlighting as a landman, which was, in full transparency, our understanding between the Congresswoman and I. She knew I was never coming to work for her to get into a life of being a staffer long term. So I told her that from the very onset, that I'm a landman. I'm in the energy business, in the oil and gas business, and I have no plans to deviate from that. I'm going to stay in that field. And she said pretty plainly to me, I don't care what you do outside of here, as long as you do what you need to do for me and you take care of the business I need you to take care of. Yeah. So about the time that March 2020 and COVID rolled around, I'd already been thinking about submitting my notice to resign, to move on and get back into the energy business completely full time. So, yeah.
So you were a landman before you went to work for Kay Granger.
Right.
And then after, you kind of did independent stuff, or did you work directly for someone? Or?
I was an independent landman throughout that time. So I've been a landman over 15 years, and the majority of that was being an independent landman. I guess you could say I'm still independent, but I own and operate my own land services company now with two business partners.
In general, tell the listeners and viewers, what does a landman do?
So landman's the front lines of the energy business. So, I mean, we're the first in, we're also the first out when things get bad. But a landman is essentially a broker, a facilitator. We go in and we take all the leases to lease mineral rights so that oil and gas exploration companies can put together drilling units across, large fields to come in and drill multiple wells. They cannot drill without having the approval and the permission of the mineral owner. So we come in and we negotiate all the contracts that are necessary to get all the paperwork in place, to get the public records filed, the documents that need to be filed, the memorandums of oil and gas leases for public record, so that it's there. We run title, meaning we put together a chain of ownership from the original land patent, the land grant in the state of Texas, when they were being granted 640 acre sections, all the way to current present day. And we chain that ownership out from who was originally patented that survey or that tract of land, all the way to who owns it. And we got to make sure that along the way, that if anybody reserved their minerals or a portion of their minerals, that we note that, and we chase out all the interests until we have a final, what we call mineral ownership report, that indicates to us and to our clients who those parties are that own the mineral interests. And then we go in and we contact those folks. We research and find them. We send them emails, call them on the phone, send them letters, and then we start making offers to negotiate a royalty, to negotiate a signing bonus. And then from there, the oil and gas operator takes it and they go out and they drill, and hopefully they strike big, and that ends up becoming a producing oil field from now till the day comes. So
back when you got started, were you still going courthouse to courthouse, or?
Oh, yeah.
Has it all become electronic since then, or?
Yeah, a lot of it's electronic nowadays. Most county clerks have become more in line with the times and sophisticated. I would say it's probably about, 15 years ago, maybe a little more, that county clerks got wise to that. They had landmen coming in and out of the courthouses, literally opening the physical deed books, the official public records, scanning documents, looking at documents, putting them on copiers, taking scans with them. It was a little bit archaic, and used to, landmen would keep a run sheet, is what we call it, but the chain of ownership, who the grantor was, the date that they granted it to the grantee, how much they granted, how much acreage, what percentage of ownership. They used to keep it on a yellow legal pad.
No kidding.
And so when they'd hand over a run sheet and an ownership report, it was literally handwritten on a legal pad or a piece of paper. And so now, of course, it's all done in Microsoft Excel. We have, we really dress it up. We make them look nice. It's easy for a title examiner to follow. And so that's all part of the process. So I mean, the leasing part for a landman is the funnest part. At least it is for me. There's some guys and gals that they just want to run title. They're introverts. They want to be in the online records that are online now, and they search for the documents and they run title all day, and they just get to keep to themselves. I'm more of the guy that likes to go out and negotiate the deals, and that's really where my company, Bluejack Resources, is focused. And even nowadays, as you know, we're doing a lot in renewables. The renewables industry, solar developers, data center developers are big on leveraging landmen and our expertise and our relationships and how we can facilitate deals to get done.
So tell us about Bluejack. How'd that come about, and how'd you get involved?
Yeah, so Jeff Dempsey, one of our fraternity brothers, this again talks about relationships. So Jeff Dempsey's one of our fraternity brothers. He's a guy that I've known and respected for years, been a friend for years. I'd say it was back in about 2017. Again, this kind of overlaps with my time with Kay Granger, leading up to knowing I was going to get to the point where I wanted to start transitioning out of that role. I'd had a really meaningful experience with the Congresswoman, being a congressional staffer, but my time was kind of starting to show signs that, I'd kind of done everything I'd wanted to do by being there, and focused on human trafficking and mitigating that issue and homelessness and all the things that Congresswoman had me focused on. As we started making positive impacts there, I started looking towards the next chapter. And so I called Jeff and I said, hey, we've been independent landmen for years. And when you're an independent landman, you're contracted with a land brokerage, a land services company who's contracted with an oil and gas operator or a midstream operator, or in this case, renewables companies as well. I just told Jeff, I said, I think we should sit down. I think you and I should go out on our own and start our own company. I think that we do a really good job. We've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of what land services companies are. Some are really good, some are really bad, some are ethical, some are really unethical, and their billing practices and what they're doing. And so ultimately Jeff and I got together and we started kind of charting a course to setting the foundation for starting our own business. And it took a while. I mean, it takes a while. Again, this goes back to relationships, to get that first client, to get them to give you the trust. When you sit down and you say, we should be the land services company that you hire, and they say, okay, what have you done? And you say, well, nothing. We haven't done anything yet. But I always said, everybody's first time is their first time.
Yeah.
And so somebody gives somebody a shot somewhere. In all areas of business, in all areas of life, somebody is that person who says, I'm going to give you a shot. And so somebody gave us a shot. And so in the rest of history, we ended up partnering up with a couple other guys in Bluejack Resources, which, again, as I told you earlier, not a name that I chose, but a great name. And those two business partners have since stepped out and moved on to other ventures. Okay. But Jeff and I are the principal managing partners of the business. And then we have our CFO, who's a partner in the business as well. And we operate a pretty small land services company. We kind of pride ourselves on quality over quantity of clients, and we value those relationships. And we're solely focused on about 5 to 7 clients at any one given time, rather than trying to be one of these big land services shops that is running 150 plus landmen that are across 25 clients or something like that. So we're a boutique shop, but we're successful, and we've been very successful in what we've done so far.
So going to Bluejack, what was so y'all aren't really doing oil and gas anymore? You're doing more of the renewable stuff?
No, we still do some oil and gas. For the most part, I would say the oil and gas stuff is kind of ebbs and flows. And that's not really intentional. I think that we had so much opportunity come out of renewables early on in Bluejack in our history. And our company's only really been super active for about the last, I mentioned in 2017, Jeff and I tried to get this going. We started with only oil and gas clients in about 2019. Obviously, then COVID hit. Oil went to a negative number.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not without trials and tribulations to get this business going. And so, and I'd say in about 2021, 2022, really mainly, is really where we had this massive influx of interest from renewables companies to represent them in their leasing and purchasing efforts to make way for them to go build solar facilities around the country, standalone battery storage facilities, and then now data centers. And so I'd say 95% of our business is in renewables right now. We do most of the stuff that we do in oil and gas is in midstream now. I mentioned to you earlier that title work is one part of being a landman. For some companies, it's a big part of their business. It's not for us. We're not a title shop. We do title for some clients, but we're not generating ownership reports and stuff left and right like a lot of groups are. We're focused on acquisition-driven campaigns and projects that really allow us to use our sales skills to go in and acquire land or acquire rights or other things that help benefit. And so with that, we focus really on the midstream industry in the oil and gas sector, going in and negotiating right of way for pipeline easements and water transmission systems, things like that. So that's what we like to do. So we're focused on what we like to do, rather than, having running title all the time, which can be quite a tall task, especially depending on the experience of the title agent.
We kind of got into it a little bit at lunch, but you want to break down, like for people that see renewables different ways, but what are the benefits and what do you do for the landowner and then for your client? How's that process go? And then how do the landowner benefit? And
Yeah, I'll
Where's the revenue come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of start as a precursor to going into that. I'll just say that I have learned a ton about working in renewables over the last 4 or so years. If you would ask me 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, if I thought I would be a landman working in renewables, I would have probably laughed at you and thought you're crazy. But it really is. It is a very fast-moving, fast-growth industry. All predicated by the need for the electrical demands that we have, the consumer demands that we have in electricity around the country, power demands with the United States being the greatest country on earth, and Texas and Oklahoma being two of the best states in the union. I think it's really important that we have a diversification in how we produce power and energy in this country. And so there's a lot of my peers in the oil and gas sector that may kind of laugh us off and say, oh, you're working in renewables, yeah, boo-hoo, hiss, kind of thing. But man, I'll tell you, there's a lot of tangible benefits to landowners, to communities. I've seen it. You think about some of the poorest rural parts of our states and the lack of economic engines that exist within those communities, and the school districts, the county commissioners' courts that are starved for revenue just to help support the students, or to help support M&O and roads and maintenance and all those types of things, and agriculture being the heaviest industry in those areas. While we love agriculture and we never want to, displace agriculture and our farmers and ranchers who we love and protect and want to see be successful, this push for renewable energy to cover part of the landscape of our country has been, again, driven by the massive energy demands that our country's getting from growth in the states of Texas, Oklahoma, Illinois, and beyond. I mean, there's so many parts of our country that are growing so rapidly, and I can speak specifically to Texas. Obviously, we have massive amounts of people moving into Texas every day, every week, and with that comes demand. I mean, and those consumers expect that they're going to turn their electricity on, and the power's going to be there. And, these are all things that until you get into the middle of it or down into the trenches in it, we all kind of take for granted, right? That, and that's part of, as we talked about before, being an elected official, trying to look at things that, impact people down the line. So the renewables market, putting these solar facilities in places like parts of rural Oklahoma or rural Texas, can be economic drivers. They generate a lot of tax revenue for local communities that create jobs. They provide, obviously, tremendous revenues for the landowners who are leasing or selling their ground for solar, or data centers, again, we talked about earlier. And so those can help go to support local school districts. A lot of these renewables companies in the county, a lot of these companies, they actually have missions that they have within their companies or organizations, that they have philanthropic arms of their company, that when they come into, let's say a rural part of Oklahoma, that their school district may be suffering, they need a new elementary school, or they need better security for schools nowadays, as we see all too often, unfortunately. Those types of things come with huge price tags, and they come in and they'll say, we will donate brand new playground equipment for the schools. We will make annual donations to the school district to help support the growing needs of the school district. Again, whether that's security or facilities or special programs, things like that otherwise suffer as a lack of tax revenues that are just not coming.
Right.
And so I think that's something. And so going into how landowners benefit. So solar ground leases are taken either as a lease or a purchase option. And so there's usually 3 to 4 to 5 option years that the developer is going to request while they go and do their due diligence, their study period. They have to get approval by the utility to be able to construct that facility, because you're asking the utility, who owns all the infrastructure, all the transmission lines, all the substations, to tap into their grid and push power onto the grid. So the utility does what's called an interconnection study, and they provide the feedback to the solar developer that will indicate to them how big of a facility they can build, or if there's not even enough capacity to build one at all. So, but those landowners are getting compensated throughout that option period, usually tens of thousands of dollars, somewhere in there, depending on how much acreage you're contributing, while the developer determines that they can get a green light to go to what's called notice to proceed. Once that developer hits notice to proceed, and they've given the green light checks from the utility to say, hey, construct it, we're ready to go, they'll come in and they'll start getting their lease rate revenues, which is usually, to use a flat number, it's like $1,000 per acre per year or $1,500 per acre per year for the larger farms.
Yeah.
Those are utility scale size projects that are anywhere from several hundreds of acres up to several thousands of acres in size. And then there's what's called distributed generation projects or community solar projects. Those are your small ones that are like 10 to 40 acres in size.
Oh, yeah.
And those lease rates are usually somewhere between $2,500 and $4,500 or $5,000 per acre per year. So
not bad income.
What we're seeing is a lot of farmers who are diversifying their income source. So,
right.
we know a lot of farmers and ranchers, and we know a lot of them that are plagued by acts of God, lack of rainfall, drought, things that they can't grow a crop, or there's not enough hay to feed their cattle, so they're selling cattle and things like that. We've seen a lot of farmers and ranchers, especially those that own a lot of land, thousands of acres, dedicate portions of their ranches or their farms to being under solar, because that lease rate per acre per year, that check is coming every single year, no matter what the price per kilowatt of electricity is selling for. It's not variable. It comes with an escalation. So if you get a $1,500 lease rate and you get a 2% annual rate escalator, that $1,500 is going to grow by 2% compounding interest every single year.
Wow.
So before you know it, it's $1,550, then it's $1,600. By the end of usually it's a 20-year primary term with 4 5-year options or 2 10-year options to extend out to 40 years. By the end of it, you're receiving, probably in the ballpark of $2,800 per acre per year.
Man.
Or something like that.
Can't make that on a cow.
Right. Can't make that on a cow, but you can.
Or a bushel of wheat
over here.
Right.
And that's the other thing too, is that a lot of ranchers and farmers are using those revenues to go sit down with their ag credit lender and say, hey, I've got this, revenue generating asset over here. I'd like to grow the family farm and ranch. Right. They're retaining ownership of the ground under that solar farm. So in 40 years, imagine what that land value is going to appreciate too. Plus, they're turning on millions and millions of dollars of revenue that's going to help support the pitfalls of their ag operation that we all know are inevitable and will exist.
Right.
And then they're using it to grow their operation as well, to buy new land, to expand their ranch and their farms and things like that. So I think it's answering some pain points for farmers. I am the first to admit, and I tell every landowner, and I tell my agents, everybody, all the landmen that work for me that talk to these folks, that we totally understand that this is not for everybody.
Yeah.
But there are some families that this is a really an answered prayer to, for, and there's some communities, like I mentioned before, it's an answered prayer to that superintendent and that school board. Is they want to do more. They want to be able to fund all these programs. Right. They want to have special education fully funded and give these kids the best opportunity at an education. They want to have better security at the schools, or a police officer at every campus, things like that. And so it's creating pathways for them to be able to do some of those things. And I think overall, I understand it's not for everybody. And you and I talked about this, about, the folks who don't want to look at solar and things like that. And I totally understand that. And I tell those landowners, look, obviously aesthetically, it's going to look different.
Right.
It's not going to look like crops in a field or cows, out there, albeit, as we talked about earlier, some of these companies are letting sheep graze under their panels and stuff like that to keep the grass down. So, I think it's just something that we're faced with these days as our energy demands grow, population grows, that we're going to have to contend with.
Yeah. You made a good point earlier when you said, and I hear from landowners too, they need multiple streams of income from their land. With the price of land and inflation of everything else,
right,
just running cows or just planting a crop is not getting it there. So they need, whether it's selling their water, having a power line come through, pipelines come through, solar, wind, a combination of things, leasing their hunting rights.
Yeah.
That's revenue for the landowner. And you said it well. It may be an opportunity to keep that farm in the family for multiple generations down the road.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, that's, again, I think that's a daily conversation around my office. I mean, because I'd say a good many of these folks that we reach out to they're advanced in years. They're 70, 80 years old. And what we're seeing and what I've seen and all my guys have seen is we've called around the country, because we do this work in about 14 different states around the country. Is a lot of times you're talking to that 70, that 80-year-old farmer or rancher who's worn his knuckles to the bone, and he's tired and he's crippled up, and hurting and stuff. And his kids, when they graduated college a few decades ago or what have you, they went into white collar jobs in the city, and sometimes, for a better life, because they could make a better living by going to the city and not have the pains and the uncertainties of being a farmer. What's going to happen with the crops this year if we don't get rain, those kind of things that are very real worldly things that happen. And so sometimes that ends up being, again, an answered prayer for them, because they say, well, I've been talking to my wife for the last 5 or 6 years. I can't go much longer. And my kids, they're not coming back to the farm. They don't want to farm, or they don't want to ranch for a living. And so, what do you do then? Then you're faced with, like, do we sell the farm or the ranch that's been in our family for 50 or over 100 years? This is an opportunity where they can keep it, like you said, intact. The ownership stays with the family. They lease the ground. There's some of these utility scale projects, as I mentioned to you earlier, we're sending out offers that would provide them $140 to $200 million over the course of the lease. If all options to be exercised were there, even if they weren't, they're making $70 million over the next 20 years. I mean, that is life-altering money. That is generational wealth that can be used to go support other ventures, business, capitalism at its core. Even if you just took that and put it into a simple SEP or a simple investment, a mutual fund, and let it grow.
Think about 8 or 10%. Yeah.
Think about what that does, right? So, and then you can go and you got the nicest fences, the best graded roads, you've got the best manicured land.
That's true.
There's no weeds in the pasture. You're getting them sprayed every year without consequence of, can we afford it or not? So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to paint a picture that solar is the answer to all these farmers' woes, but for some families, it really is. It answers that generational question that's been creating heartburn for them for, a decade or more, as they've seen their time and their ability physically coming to an end. Now this is an answer to that. We can keep the farm intact. We got something sustainable here.
Man, that's good. Well, as you've gone through, you've always served on, focusing now back on your public service now.
Sure.
You've always served on boards and stuff. Then you worked for Kay Granger.
Yeah.
And then what was kind of the motivator to serve as a city councilman and then mayor? Talk us through your public service life.
I mean, I think, for me, again, going back to my younger years, I mean, my mom really instilled in me, and my dad too, really instilled in me the need to be aware of what's going on in government and what's happening with policy. Not that as a 10-year-old I was talking about policy, but just understanding that having the right people in the right places that are genuine and motivated for the right reasons is super important. Supporting those people, making sure that they can obtain office or retain their office and a re-election was really instilled in me as something that was really important. I've just always had a desire to serve, whether it was at an elected level or whether it was just at a philanthropic level. I've served on several nonprofit boards, Alliance for Children I served on in Tarrant County for a few years as their executive VP of development and advancement. So I was the one coming out there asking you guys for money, support this organization. You and I have had some friendly $20 football bets that have, we donate. Cody wins. He donates the money to Alliance for Children. I lose. I donate the money to your nonprofit there in Oklahoma.
Charitable gambling.
Charitable gambling. That's right. So yeah, not a gambler. I don't think not a gambler, and but that's a fun way to do it. So, I think that just that feeling of a need, seeing a need and wanting to be part of the solution or be part of the body that helps go and try and affect positive change has really been something that was instilled in me and something that I just took ownership of, quite frankly. I think after college and after my early years of workforce, when I was just really focused on that and trying to build a career, I think that it really is something I set off in, and it was just exacerbated by my opportunity to serve under Congresswoman Granger or Chairwoman Granger. That was a lot of what I did as her outreach director. As I went and spoke to groups, I was disseminating information that what was happening in Washington, what she was doing. I was hearing from those folks. I was taking notes, writing K briefings on small businesses that were suffering or needed to see a policy change, and then nonprofits who rely, heavily on some funds that come from downstream from the federal government and the state to help support their programs and things like that. And then from there, it was, whenever I got involved in Arlington, it was just, I wanted to be involved in my hometown. I was putting down some roots there, albeit, when we started having kids, again, looking at school districts, crime, which plagues parts of Arlington, we had to make the difficult decision to move out of my hometown and find a community like Aledo, which has answered all those things for us. But when I got to Aledo, as you mentioned earlier, I still worked for the Congresswoman, so I could not pursue elected office. But I did get on boards commissions. I got the mayor at the time appointed me to Planning and Zoning Commission and our Aledo Economic Development Corporation, our little local EDC board. And so I was on those whenever I was still working as a congressional staffer. And in March of 2020, after I left the Congresswoman's employment or the U.S. House, I being on boards commissions, being a new member of the community, I started to kind of notice things that I felt like needed to be, resolved. I felt like we needed to do more in some places, and so that's what really motivated me to run for a city council seat. There was 2 seats open or up for reelection. Both of the members of the council that were up in that election chose to seek reelection. And so I picked one, and good guy. I'm sure, don't really know him that well, but I challenged him. I won. Took a lot of my experience, worked for the Congresswoman, and what I learned working with her on the campaign side, and then working in the campaigns that I had back in Arlington, and really kind of carried that into Aledo and ran a sophisticated and organized campaign. Ended up unseating that guy, and then that councilman, and then. From there, I was really, not intending to run for mayor. I was not intending to. It was not one of these progressions like, oh, he's going to run for mayor, then he's going to run for this and that and on beyond. It was more when the mayor decided to run for state representative in the primary. She was not seeking reelection, and I had several people come to me and say, you know what it's like to be, not, I don't want to say groomed, but you're being asked, you're being voluntold, or, as they like to say, encouraged. I had several people call me and come up to me and say, we really, really would like for you to do this, similar to the gubernatorial candidate that you spoke with recently. And I think that's where it starts for a lot of people, is people, they see something in you. They see that they think that you could be the right person for the job. And so I sought the mayor's seat. I had a challenger who was another councilman. I ended up winning that campaign pretty handily, 60-40, best I can recall. Served 3 years in that post. And so the main driver behind that was Parker County is the 9th fastest growing county in the country. Aledo, by the year 2100, it's estimated Aledo will be the center of the Metroplex.
Wow.
So when you think about that growth trend, it is not only puzzling and unfathomable to think about if you zoom out of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex map and find Aledo and understand what all has to grow south and west of us and northwest of us for that to become the center of the Metroplex. We knew inherently there's tremendous growth coming at us. With tremendous growth can either come positive, well-established, managed growth and development, or it can come as we're getting run over by substandard, poor quality developments that will end up plaguing our community over the coming decades because they were low quality investments, low quality standard developments. And then also Aledo doesn't have a police department, hasn't. We do now. And so that was my number one priority when I ran for mayor, and we got it done inside the 3-year term that I served. So standing up a police department from the ground up was my biggest mission. It was by far the biggest challenge that I faced. Of course, we updated our economic development policies and our zoning to reflect a standard that would force developers to work with us to build high quality, good developments. But my number one objective was the police department. As I mentioned, at the onset of this podcast, I've got 3 young kids, as you know. So, watching my kids in the neighborhood and stuff, we live in a very a wonderful community, and some people might look at it and think it's Pleasantville. I mean, it's really like that, and that's pure Americana. That's what we grew up like, setting off on your bike and not being home till dark, and our parents weren't worried. Now we got more things to worry about, and unfortunately, even really safe and good communities like Aledo are going to need a really good public safety and law enforcement agency to ensure that protection and that safety continues. And so I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud that in my term as mayor, and I started that push, of course, when I was on city council, and I got like, do we have a crime problem that I don't know about? And I'm like, well, no, we don't now, thankfully.
As we grow.
But it's not time to start talking about it when we find that we have a crime problem. It's time to start planning for it now, knowing the growth that's going to come over that eastern horizon. as Fort Worth expands in western Tarrant County, as that develops over here, higher density brings more people, which will inherently and statistically bring more crime.
Yeah.
And so that was my number one objective. We got it done. We hired our first police chief last year. I had to think about that for a second. Yeah, Carol is an amazing person. Carol Riddle. She was a longtime deputy chief in Arlington. Just purely coincidental, folks. And didn't know Carol from Adam beforehand, but once we did go through the hiring process, got a lot of really awesome people from Arlington that I grew up with, including Jeff Williams, my friend and mentor, who said Carol is as good as it comes. And so she was actually not president, but she was the chief for the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank.
Oh, wow.
And was looking to transition out of that. That was more of a high security position. She wanted to get back into true policing. So,
say real quick for the viewers, Aledo, before you had a police force, y'all were already a 5A high school, right?
Correct.
With no police force. Just to give reference of how much Aledo needed a police force. 5A high school, no police force.
That's right. Yeah, 5A high school. The ISD is 130 square miles, and so very large ISD, incorporates a lot of rural communities around us. And Aledo is still pretty rural as well.
Yeah,
and so
still kind of a small town.
Yeah, still small town. It embodies all the things that you want. You want like the convenience many times of retail shopping. We've got an H-E-B in Hudson Oaks that's down the road. We've got Weatherford right here and all these amazing businesses like the Beer Beast where we are today that are in earshot of us. But at the same time, we've got a tremendous amount of growth. And it was a little bit baffling to me that we hadn't talked about instituting our own police department. I was like, and how many people moved into Aledo, which we have a lot of new people moving into Aledo all the time,
right?
Because we're an amazing community. We have an amazing school district, and we have a very close proximity to Fort Worth. I mean, we can be in downtown Fort Worth in about 18 minutes. And so
commuters, a lot of
commuter traffic. Yeah, most of our workforce is commuter to Fort Worth, and that's part of the economic development growth that we can touch on later if we have time. That we instituted, trying to keep money in businesses and that consumer tax in Aledo. But yeah, it was grossly apparent to me that planning stage needed to start now. Yeah. I moved a petition to us, moved to a council manager form of government. We hired the first full-time city manager that the city had ever had. We worked with our sheriff's department, our sheriff Russ Althier, on who was policing Aledo for us on a contract basis. So we had deputies patrolling Aledo. And sheriff's departments are great organizations, but they're a county organization. They're focused on, in large part, what's happening in the county, and they're just not a municipal police department. And quite frankly, they don't want to be.
Right.
And I don't blame them. I mean, my brother-in-law Jake, who I think you've met, he was a sergeant investigator with the Van Zandt County Sheriff's Office for a long time, and now he's with the PD. Two totally different styles of policing. And so, again, we worked on that transition. We got Carol in there. She's hiring the first officers right now, and we funded to get 4 patrol cars. 2 under my time as mayor, and now 2 more under the new council have been ordered and are being outfitted. And so we'll have 4 patrol cars. We'll have 6 officers, and that will steadily grow in how we implement it. And we did all that with keeping a low tax rate. And not having to drive that. And the reason why we were able to do that is because at the same time, simultaneously, we were focused on economic development and growth, and we were attracting new restaurants proactively. This is what I said when I came in as mayor, had my city manager sit down on day one, and then day one of his job. And I went over my list of priorities, and I said, we were going to not be reactive to economic development. We're going to be proactive. We're going to go out and we're going to knock on doors, and we're going to see these proven businesses that have been successful, and they've been successful not just in a one-off situation. They've been successful in multiple locations, and we're going to ask them, tell them, we want you here in Aledo. What's it going to take for you to come to Aledo? And so, again, that's maybe a smooth segue into a little bit of tax abatement and some of those incentives that we talked about earlier. But we offer some tax incentives, some abatement, nothing crazy, but just, a couple $100,000 over the next, 3 to 7 years, depending on the structure of the deal. And we brought in 3 really good new restaurants that are driving a tremendous amount of sales tax. We were up 18% year over year.
Wow.
And so when everybody else's sales tax numbers were diving off and they were actually losing on their sales tax, we were growing by 15 to 18%. And so that increase in that consumer tax was helping us support the institution of a police department and
Right.
the purchasing of vehicles without going to the taxpayers and saying, we're gonna have to raise taxes. We maintain about a 38 cent, per 100 tax rate, which is one of the lowest in our region. And so we're proud of it, and we're able to do that and do it successfully. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So you're no longer mayor. You're focusing on private life and the kids and stuff. Do you see yourself getting back into an elected or running for an elected office again, do you think? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dependent on him,
Right.
and I mean, I hate to give a cheesy answer if that is one. I think nobody knows what the future
Right.
holds, and again, I'm not trying to give a political answer here. I'm really not. I mean, I'm taking it in stride, and I mean, ever since I left my term as mayor, I have had people come up to me and ask me to run for different things, state positions, county positions, things like that. And I just said, listen, I'm taking a break. I mean, public service is truly that. It's public service, and you know that, and we'll soon find that out, hopefully. And it's one of those things that you give of yourself. Between my time as a congressional staffer to boards and commissions to being on city council to running for mayor or serving as mayor, excuse me, I've had about 10 years in public service.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I look back and it was all completely worth it. And even in the hardest times, you look back and you reflect on that, and it was tough. I mean, there was times where, I was watching my wife in tears because people are vicious. People will say really nasty things about you. They will accuse you of things that, like, you're just like, I don't even know you. Like, what are we talking about? You're just like making stuff up and putting it on Facebook. And I don't even, so there's some of those times, and your skin gets, I've always had pretty thick skin, but your skin gets thicker and thicker and thicker. So you look back on those times, you reflect on what all you were able to accomplish. Look, I think that if the opportunity presented itself, and I felt in my heart of hearts and that God was calling me to do it, and I felt convicted about it, and I had the support of my wife, perhaps when my kids are older or out of school even, it's definitely something I would consider. Like I said before, it's hard to get away from, and my wife knows this. It is hard to get away from that pull, that draw. If you are inclined to serve in any capacity, it doesn't even have to be an elected capacity. It can be a volunteer capacity. That yearning is kind of always there.
Right.
It's always tugging at you. It's always, you're always feeling it. And when you see a problem, somebody asked me one time, I guess this was during my campaign, like, how would you define leadership? And I said, and this is off the top of my head. I didn't know the question was coming. And so I didn't have time to prepare for it. And the first thing that came to my mind was that, well, leadership first and foremost is being willing to say, send me.
Right.
It's being willing to say, not pointing like, hey, would you do that? It's being willing to say, I'll be the one. I'll go. I will take up this burden. I will shoulder this. I will go take it on. Whether it's you're seeing an issue or whether it's a nonprofit drive, that they need to raise, $500,000 or whatever, is just saying, I'll help champion that, And so I think that yearning is always there for me. I think it always will be. And in what capacity, I don't know. You mentioned I'm spending time focusing on family, my business, which that's the other thing. And I mean, I told you this before. I mean, you will learn this if you're elected. And even now you're sacrificing as you're doing this, as you're running your campaign, it pulls you away from your business. So your business can suffer as a result. Just like my mentor, Jeff Williams, found that out. He owns a civil engineering firm in Arlington. He had to stop bidding on projects in Arlington, which he used to get a lot of projects in Arlington. He passed on millions of dollars of revenue as a result of his dedication to serve as mayor of Arlington. Those kind of things are inherently there. And so, but I found other ways to serve, Cody. I mean, people asked, I spoke to first and fifth graders before I left my term as mayor at my kids' elementary school. And one of the most innocent and fun questions I got was like, what do you want to do when you're no longer mayor? And it didn't even have to think about it. I said, I want to coach my kids. And I've always coached, but I've always kind of had to be the assistant coach because I didn't have the bandwidth and the time to really commit to dedicate to it. That's who I am. If I'm going to head coach a ball team, I want them to get the best of me. I'm going to ask the best of them. I should be willing and be confident I can give the best of me to them. And so now I'm in a position where I'm starting to head coach. I've gotten recruited to serve on the board. I'm a commissioner for the baseball league. And again, I'm involved in some nonprofit stuff to try and help out and raise some money for some local nonprofits and benefactor, type endeavors. And so that's kind of where I'm focusing my time right now. And I'm having a great time with it. And so we'll see what the future holds. But
yeah, you're in that golden age of the kids. I mean,
yeah,
we're starting to learn as they become teenagers. They they go to their room, they disappear, they don't want to be around you.
Yeah.
You might as well learn. But you're serving anyway. You're still serving along.
Well, that's exactly right.
In your business, like when you guys were getting started, the financials, how'd you guys get off the ground? Did one of you keep another job, or how'd the revenue come in? Was it immediate? Did it take a while?
No, it's a great question. No, revenue did not come in immediately. And yes, we did. Jeff and I both held down other jobs, other land gigs at the time, to help support that. And we office from home. We kept a low overhead, little to no overhead really, and just hit the streets business developing and trying to get that first client. And then revenue started coming. We were paying ourselves next to nothing. I mean, this is the same story you hear.
Yeah.
And I mean, whether, Beer to Beast or whomever starts a barber shop or any kind of, retail shop or anything, you're eating, ham and cheese sandwiches for, a year or two. And that's kind of how it went. And I mean, it wasn't until I think year two really, kind of going into almost close to year three that we started like really feeling like, okay, yeah, now we've hit a stride here a little bit, and we're starting to see some opportunity for some growth here. And now we're growing at about 25-30% over last year's number. And so we're in a good spot, and hopefully that continues. That's part of my job as president of the company is I'm focused on business development, client relations, maintaining those existing clients that we have, but also focusing on new business and keeping our pipeline full so that we can retain, our talent and keep them in place. And that's really too, going back to, that's kind of what renewables has done for us a bit too, because oil and gas is so volatile.
Right.
You're talking about two commodity prices that, depending on geopolitics, depending on who's in the White House and Congress, whatever, you're subject to so many factors. And I'm not saying renewables is immune to that, because they're certainly not. We saw that with the one big beautiful bill. A lot of those tax credits are going away or being phased out, which I don't disagree with at all. From a conservative standpoint, I think it's right. But some of those things are impacting the renewables industry. But renewables has really created some stability for us, because even without those tax credits, those renewables developers, there's still money to be made. They're opportunistic. They're still capitalist driven, entities that are out there to make things happen. So I'd say that, it was a rough couple years where it was touch and go. I did a little bit in the private sector space with a group called Rehab Warriors, with my friend Andy, that is a recon Marine retired specialist that ended up starting his own nonprofit, or it's not a nonprofit, but starting a nonprofit driven type entity that did some of that stuff. So you just kind of find things that you do to just like get along, to pay the bills, to figure out how to do it. So, and fortunately, I can't go without saying this, I'm supported by a really successful and amazing wife. Yeah. She's a champion, and she's very successful in her own right. And so when things were a little touch and go for me, thankfully she was in a very steady sales job that she was doing great for us. And so that's, something I hope I have and hope to continue to repay for her, and eventually maybe give her the opportunity to not have to do anything in the future. Right. But right now,
she was there as y'all were growing the business.
That's right. Right now, 3 little kids, man, it's expensive, and
sure.
And still need her to get out and sell, baby. That's what my daughter says, to my wife or to us. She's like, why you got to go to work? And I was like, because we got to make that money, honey.
That's right.
We got to make that money, honey.
We got expensive hobbies to pay for.
That's right. So, you live in a good community, but to provide a nice life for your kids, and everybody else that watches this knows, I mean, it takes money.
Sure.
So,
well, how do you who manages the people at the business? Is that you, or is that Jeff, or how do y'all?
So Jeff serves as our
management.
Jeff's a managing member like me, so he's my partner, and then we have our CFO Ben, that's a partner as well. But Jeff is our vice president of land. He's our acting vice president of land. So Jeff oversees kind of when we do have to do title and things like that. He oversees those types of things. We have to go in and negotiate special agreements and things like that, crossing agreements with utilities, other things, accommodation agreements, which is when you have to accommodate the mineral interest owners. If you're going to put solar over them, you got to do set-asides for future well locations to ensure that those minerals are still accessible by the operators who are going to come in and want to drill wells while there's solar on the surface. So he focuses a lot on that. I'd say in large part I oversee just our small staff, and just kind kind of HR issues, if there are any. All of our guys are still serve as independent contractors, so they're pretty self-sustained, self-reliant, and doesn't require a whole lot of management on my part. I just try and keep, everybody happy and try and keep the morale up. And when we go through a dry spell and we don't get a deal, I'm just the guy that's trying to encourage them to say, hey, it takes one deal and you're back in it, buddy. You're back in it. So we're all about close ones. And so sometimes when you go through a drought and you don't close one for a while, it can be tough to come in there and just keep hammering all day long. And you're like, I need a win. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do y'all, as far as managing independent contractors, is there an issue there?
No,
I'm kind of the same way. I work with a lot of 1099 guys, and
yeah,
they're harder. You can't tell them what to do every day.
Yeah,
right, necessarily.
So yes and
they
no.
work for you.
Yes and no. I mean, there's certainly some labor laws that you have to be mindful of and abide by. And I mean, I learned a lot of this being an independent landman, of like being told I have to be in the office every day. I'm like, you can't tell me that.
I'm not
that kind of thing. So yeah, there's certain groups that have gotten their hands slapped and gotten into full-on lawsuits as a result of those things. And so we're mindful of that. Jeff's wife works for the labor board, so it's like, I mean, if there's any question as to that defined line of what we can ask of them, she's usually one to tell us like, hey, yeah, you can't do that, or you can do this. It's fine. So fortunately, our guys are real happy, and gals, real happy. And we're not a micromanaged group. We're, as independent landmen, Jeff and I especially we have learned what it's like to be micromanaged. There's a reason that we're independent landmen. We didn't really ever want to go work for the man exclusively. Like corporately driven companies are just not my bread and butter, not his bread and butter. And so we put a lot of emphasis on just making sure our guys and gals feel really valued. And what I mean by that is like we pay them like they're salaried employees. And so if they need a day off, I'm not telling them like, hey, you can't bill today.
Right.
Because I understand and Jeff understands what goes around comes around.
Sure.
And we know they're relying on a paycheck just because they need to go visit their kid at college for a week or to get them moved in to the dorm or something like that. I don't want them to suffer as a result of that. So that's going to cause undue stress on them, that they're going to go without a paycheck for a week. And so we bleed that into them and let them understand that like we're family and we want it to feel that way. We want the culture to be positive. We want you guys to understand that we value you and this is how we're going to show you that. And then, they get, like unlike a lot of landmen, they get they're bonus eligible at the end of the year as well.
Nice.
Depending on their performance and, their work ethic. So
sounds like a good setup.
Yeah.
Do you, you talked about Jeff Williams, the Arlington guy? Is that, as far as mentors, would you say he's one of your biggest mentors?
I don't think there's any question. Jeff is my biggest mentor. I think Kay Granger certainly was a big mentor of mine for a long time. Kay and I have kind of lost touch since I left her office, but Jeff is certainly that person that has just been my kind of ride or die. Like I could call him anytime. I could, especially as a mayor, from mayor to mayor. He was not mayor whenever I was mayor. He was term limited in Arlington, which was, I think, a shame. I'm a fan of term limits in situations, but I think that one was a shame. And so I would call and say, kind of, what would you do here? What do you suggest? How do you think we should go about this? Seeking federal funding, like going through some obscure processes that, you try and navigate. So, and just beyond that, I could call Jeff about life.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's almost the divine, place that Jeff put, or God put Jeff in my life at the time that he did, is my Sunday school teacher. He was a mentor then. He's been a mentor for me throughout my upbringing. He's been a mentor throughout my adulthood. And he's the guy that I can call at any given moment. He would drop anything as a very busy man. He just released a book called The Unity Blueprint that he's been around doing a book tour on. It's one of the Amazon top bestsellers. I think it may have even been announced as a New York Times bestseller. And this is a guy that has just been incredibly successful. And like anything, I mean, from a business standpoint or from a public service standpoint, you want to have somebody like that.
Yeah.
You don't need to go reinvent the wheel. You're going to have a way to do your things the way that you feel like you want to do them. You kind of carve your own path, but you pick somebody like that has inherently been successful, and has been very respected by many and almost all throughout, the time that you've known them. And you just want to lean on them and you want to say, tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. How did you do it? What did you learn? What was right about this? What was wrong about it? And Jeff is that person for me. He's somebody that, while we go months without talking now that I'm not mayor anymore, he supported me throughout my time as mayor. He helped us, constantly. So yeah, very, very good guy. He's been really influential, as was Kay Granger in the Medal of Honor Museum coming to Arlington. Yeah. So he solidified that as mayor, bringing the Medal of Honor Museum to Arlington, which they had 6 real locations around the country they were looking hard at. And man, they put in a lot of time, a lot of effort. The Congresswoman put a lot of time, a lot of effort, put in some federal funding appropriations to get that built. And then he served, in some capacity, I think a board position at the Medal of Honor Museum, and has been integral into seeing that come to fruition. So he's just an incredible guy.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, good dude.
Good dude.
Yeah.
Well, what do you guys do for fun? What's your hobbies? Where do y'all go on vacation and stuff?
Man, you know my hobbies because you're with me. Some of them, I love to hunt and fish. As a family, I think this sounds cheesy. Anything as a family is great. Right. I mean, like we typically try and go to, some sort of resort like the JW in San Antonio or something. My wife accrues some Marriott points and things like that from some of her travel, and we'll go spend some of those points to take the kids there and let them play in the water and stuff. There's a nice golf course there. If I feel like spending $230 to go golf by myself, sometimes I'll do that, but rarely. We'd like to go to Broken Bow. We'd like to come to Oklahoma. And I don't know why I keep saying Broken Bow. We really go to Hochtown. Yeah. And so, we do that once a year, maybe twice a year, when the weather's nice. It's always the peak season, so you're paying more, but there's a reason for it. Yeah. The fall color changes, going down to the river to try and trout fish, and stuff like that. And I mean, we go to the beach usually once a year, maybe every other year, depending on what all we got going on. But man, as you know, from Cade especially, we got activities out the wazoo. I mean, we're all-star baseball, travel ball, and there's 7 and 6, and so it's like, I mean, that's a whole nother topic for a podcast. Some other time, that it is all about, where do you spend your time? How much do you really let your kids go 100-0? But they love it. And we always giving them the choice. And so we spend a lot of our time doing that. So some of our travel ends up revolving around
sports and
stars
stuff. Sure.
And the World Series and stuff like that.
That's your weekend trips going tournament ball and
weekend trips. And so I should have put that do not disturb on earlier, I guess.
Well, what, as far as books and podcasts or anything, what are you reading? What are you listening to?
So, my next read will be the Unity Blueprint that Jeff is a book on leadership that he wrote. It took him a few years to publish it. So that'll be my next read. I try and find time to read stuff. I really like history. So I read a lot about history and things like that, because I think that's inherently, something that we, especially those that step into the fray and to public service, need to understand history.
Right.
So we don't repeat it. The bad stuff, we repeat the good stuff, but not the bad stuff. So, I actually watch a lot of documentaries and stuff about history and things. And so, I'd say I wish I had more time to read these days. I am inundated with kids and all kinds of stuff, so it leaves very little time for reading, but the Unity Blueprint will be my next read.
Good. Well, what's your favorite restaurant?
Favorite restaurant? Oh, my goodness. I think it's got to be Joe T. Garcia's. And it's not necessarily because of the food. Excuse me. I think it's got to be the ambiance. I mean, I love being in the stockyards. I love being able to, and we were just there this past weekend to, celebrate a good friend. And there's something about that whole area of going down to Joe T's with a group of friends and having some margaritas and sharing food together. Yeah. And then going over to Hotel Drover and walking through the stockyards and stuff. That's just really special. So, yeah, that's usually where I do my birthday every year. So
yeah,
I got a birthday coming up later this month, and my wife said, "What do you want to do this year?" And I was like, "Same thing I want to do every year. I want to go to Joe T's."
Joe T's. Yeah, so there you go. Well, would you want anybody to reach out to you? I mean, you don't necessarily have a retail business or something.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to ask you questions or mentor you or anything, can they reach out to you through social media or something?
I'm totally open to that. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as I am the Stand Man. But LinkedIn is probably the best place. You can go to bluejackresources.com. I'm reachable by there. So yeah, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody if they had any questions or wanted to visit with me about anything. So.
Yeah. Man, I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad you met up with me today.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me, man.
You bet. Want to give a shout out again to the Bearded Beast. Michael Thompson let us come over here in Weatherford, Texas, hang out in his loft and record a couple podcasts. So it's a cool little place. So hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.